Hey guys, really quick, this QIWI, I've watched this stock for a while. Recent breakdown from a long base. We don't like to see a channel base right here back in late November, and we kind of busted through some support levels that we've had for a while, breaking the lower Bollinger, and now we're tapping the top Bollinger. We haven't been able to bust through that top Bollinger in a while, and this is an ugly chart on a 1 year for sure, but we do have a 4-8 cross in the short term, and we've pushed through the 20 SMA, and that's kind of been a directional indicator for a little while. They do make money, so I'm not, I'm not too worried about holding this if we do a swing trade. I think the setup is if we pull back into the mid 15s, our stop's got to be around 1450. That's the area that we had the directional changes on the pivot, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let's remove some of these really. So we're not getting a ton of follow through here in pre-market. We're kind of floundering around the 16 area. But we do have the MACD cross, and then the big pop, and then the pullback. The MACD cross happened right in this area, and that's kind of where we came back down to and then broke back out again. But we're still contained within the bigger macro chart here. I don't use opens like that. Kind of in this here area is what we're looking at here for our wedge. So your supports obviously would be in these little channel areas where we had the directional change from a downtrend to an uptrend. And if this has some follow through, it shouldn't break the 1480 on a close. Obviously, this is moving in time if we continue this little uptrend that we're doing. But I kind of think our stop would have to be somewhere around 1450 if we got the 1550. So you got to point to the downside if you bought in the mid 15s. I don't know. Upside, we might be able to get into the high 16s. It's hard to say. This is a huge congestion area. So without news and a huge amount of volume, we're not going to break through here. So interesting stock, but we're going to have to let it come to us. It's not a good risk reward buying it close to 16. Maybe if we got to mid 15s or low 15s, it looks like an interesting entry with that closing stop at around 1450. A point down, and maybe, I don't know, we'd like to see 2 points up, which would put us in the 17. So it's a tough call. Could we get up to 1750 in this area? I'm certain we could. If you look at this thing over a longer period of time, it's got a lot of price history, quite a bit higher than that. So let's dig into this a little bit further here and keep an eye on intraday. This interesting price point on the longer term moving average intermediate term is the 50 SMA. It's been fairly accurate on some areas where we've had some stretch points that it's unable to hold, kind of floundered around it, and then we broke down right along that area and we tapped it here, and then we came short. So sellers were coming in a little bit shy of that, but now if you continue to look through, today's trade puts us back over that 50 SMA. So this is becoming interesting to buy and hold, but not to chase here. Once again, we're just looking for a risk reward with a proper setup so that our our sell is going to give us a tight contained trade, and the upside is really unknown at this point. Could we bust through this long line here in this congestion area? Yeah, we could, and that would get us in close to that 18 that we want to see. High 17s, here's a 2-to-1, but it's going to need to pull back here. Heck, if we pulled back into the 1480, 1490, that would be a really good thing to see. But pulling back into the high 15s just isn't enough yet. I think at 1550, I'd start watching it, and I'd become interested, and I'd need to probably do a 2-part scale, and I'd nibble a little bit there, then add if we got into the upper 14s. And then I'd set my stop on the close. Maybe a little bit lower if I got an average back down there, because then my upside needs to be a little less to give me that 2-to-1. One more stock I wanted to look at this morning, and it's getting close to the open here. We got about 20 minutes, probably about 5 before you guys will see this. This G cap is really interesting. If we're going to get a little resurgence in the Bitcoin stocks, assuming that theme's not over with yet, this G cap looks interesting here. I'm just trying to determine whether this is pure momentum and where our top side would be. Nice clean break from yesterday. And now you got some follow through. And this is a 1-year chart too, so you're definitely breaking away from some price points here. I mean, you have to go back almost 5 years to get this area here where we're at right now. Right around 1250. If it busts above that wick, I don't think it's going to hold, but this thing has a lot of momentum here. And it's got a lot of volume too. A huge amount of volume. So this is going to be an interesting play if it pulls back and starts to base intraday. Say you pulled back into the mid 11s and you start to flatline. This is one to watch too. Tough to call this on a swing though, unless we're trading intraday on like a chat room. This one's a tough one. Interesting chart though for sure, given that massive volume. Biggest volume in the history of the stock. Perfect example of a stock getting into an old wick that it failed from was LIVE yesterday. It did one trade in that. Made a little money, but now we're completely pulling back lower than the low of yesterday. That 21 now that was support is going to be resistance, but now makes for an interesting setup on a buy because the fundamentals were there on the earnings call. It was really good earnings. Let's try to figure out where this can pull back to on a fib scale. I'm not saying we're going to get there, and it's hard to use these top emotional buying areas for Fibonacci placement, but there is an interesting area here that we closed at on a fib scale, a 50% retracement. We might need to lower these numbers a little bit, and we're in between this gap on the fib, so it's hard to say. 1850 is going to be your first resistance, but if we get around 1680, 1690, I'm probably going to take another stab at this.